So we've spent a good chunk of time talking about Metal Gear balancing. We've talked about the different kinds of sandboxes. We've talked about how certain weapons are problematic, how some of them work very well. But one thing I feel we haven't talked enough about is the idea of space.
Space!
Not that kind of space, though. I'm talking about just how different weapons could feel good or bad depending on the space that you're in. Let's take the trank gun, for example. In Metal Gear Solid 2, when you're sneaking around the tanker, the trank gun feels absolutely fine. It doesn't feel broken. You're in very condensed, tight spaces. Even when you're outside, it's not like you're having great distances, and it's reasonable for a pistol to be able to cover the distances you're shooting at. However, once you start getting to the plant chapter of the game and you're able to snipe guys across the big shell, platform to platform with the trank pistol, it starts to feel like a little bit of an overpowered mess. Couple this together with the fact that when you're in tight, closer quarter situations and you get alerts or you have a bunch of guys, the trank pistol doesn't feel as powerful. I mean, just try using it in the one shootout with a bunch of guys there in that one hallway, that kind of mini boss fight, and you'll see that the trank pistol, as good as it is, has some flaws. Now, of course, a game that balances the trank pistol and a whole bunch of other weapons we're going to talk about in a second a lot better would be Ground Zero. See, the base is all a good combination of close quarters and longer range areas. There's different contexts that require different weapons. The trank pistol in the game has its drop, it has its ammo limitations, so you're pushed to go and use other weapons. But what makes it so good is that when you use those other weapons and you start to get to know the base better, you start getting a feel for where those weapons should be applied. And that's what I want to talk about today. I'm Pliskin, and I want to talk about how space dictates balancing.
Hey, you're pretty good!
So, while there's certain weapons that are very easy to place within a given space in terms of their effectiveness, for example, the shotgun being really effective in the interior of the base, the assault rifle being very effective in the heliport areas or in those kind of mid-range stretches between the warehouses, there's a certain class of weapon that is not just difficult in Ground Zeroes to balance out, but in every single game. You see, the trank gun, there's a metaphor that I've already used in this video for it, and all of the issues with the trank gun actually bleeds into a shit ton of other games with this one class of weapons. And that one weapon class is snipers. Now again, Ground Zeroes handles snipers very well. You get one sniper in the game, it's unsuppressed. There are certain missions and certain contexts where it's very useful, but it comes with a lot of negatives to it. The fact that everyone is going to hear it. The fact that there's not a lot of clear sight lines, and you really got to take your time to know the base and know your enemy's patrols to use the sniper effectively. And you need to have a way to get out when enemies probably hear the shot, come looking for you, or are immediately alerted to you. Let's imagine that Ground Zeroes did what Phantom Pain or a lot of other games do and gave Snake a suppressed sniper rifle. All of a sudden, it wouldn't really be used as a sniper rifle, it would just be used as an enhanced lethal trank gun. Let's talk about Far Cry for a second. Far Cry's 3 and 4 are kind of characterized in their meta by their suppressed sniper rifles. I mean, before you even get the 50 BMG snipers, once you get the MD, I forget what it's called in game, but the one that's supposed to be the Remington 700. Once you get the Remington 700 and you suppress it, most scenarios in the game, in the open world or in the campaign, can be cleared out with this singular weapon. And its application is very similar to how one would use the trank pistol in the Metal Gear series. You see, in theory, this weapon is meant to pick enemies off from far away, and then make your approach after maybe even using the scope to scout out the base. So you clear out the enemies you think are going to be a problem on your approach, you get a feel for the leyland, and then you make your way into the base or wherever Jason or AJ are trying to get into. However, once you realize that you can take these sniper rifles and just walk around the base and almost point blank people in the head during stealth with no stealth penalties because that suppressor is just absolute, you start to see how the tranq pistol overpowered problem starts to apply to the sniper class of weaponry. My brother actually phrased it really well. He said that once you get the suppressed sniper rifles, you don't have to play the game, and you only have to start playing the game once you're out of ammo in these weapons. And I think that's a good point. Far Cry is a game where you're supposed to be going in and placing C4, stabbing guys in the back, doing like ambush rush buys with LMGs. But once you get the suppressed sniper rifles, they're just so powerful that every other weapon, even some of the explosives, lose their value. Similarly to how when you're playing Metal Gear Solid 3, 4, 5, it's that same kind of idea, how you just have this one weapon and this one style of play that just takes over everything else. So all of a sudden, all of these wonderful options that the developers have implemented into their game for you to experiment with, all of a sudden goes down the shitter. Now, part of this could be that just snipers are very difficult to balance as snipers. Of course, you have Ground Zeroes that really thinks this out clearly. However, in a lot of games like Metal Gear Solid 5 and Far Cry 3, you don't ever actually snipe. You see, the render distance, I think in Metal Gear Solid 5 goes out maybe to about like 250 meters, something like that. In Far Cry 3, I think it's like 300. I mean, I'll be showing it on screen, so the numbers might be different. However, you're never at a proper sniping range. You see, most sniper rifles are operating between like 700 to even like 1,000 meters. You're taking shots from really far away, and you really need to take your time to make sure you hit your shots accurately. If you guys want, we could do a virtuality versus reality for sniping, where I talk more about realistic sniping. But for the sake of this video, you're shooting guys at ranges that an M4 could handle. And of course, this really comes down to hardware limitation. Like, if you're really gonna make a game about sniping, you'd probably have to build an engine around this idea of engaging threats at crazy distances, and a whole lot of work would go into map design for that, and it would probably invalidate a lot of the other weapons you have at your disposal, still having the sniper be dominant, but just in a very different way from the weird tranq gun headshot meta that it is now. Aside from Ground Zeroes, there's one other game that balances out its sniper rifle really, really well. I don't know if I've ever spoken to you guys about this game. It's a little bit of a niche gem. It's called Halo 1 Combat Evolved. Now, this one specific encounter towards the end of one of my favorite missions called 2 Betrayals is probably one of my best and favorite examples of why Halo is so fun to play. So before you reach this canyon, there's a crashed ship that has a sniper rifle, a rocket launcher, the game's pistol, which is more like a DMR, and other weapons that pretty much encapsulate the entire sandbox. So you have the entire sandbox at your disposal. You take a couple steps forward, you go into this canyon, and you get this nice perch. On this perch, you look across the field and you see a battle happening between two of the factions in-game. Now, Halo 1 has brilliantly designed enemies, and their silhouettes are recognizable from a distance, so you know exactly how these guys are going to be fighting. You know exactly what to expect from all of the different enemies you're seeing. You know where your rocket launcher is going to be applicable, where your sniper rifle is going to be applicable, which enemies to take out with it. You know when you go back to that crashed ship and pick up a different weapon, how you're going to approach that battlefield. What is the optimal way? What order do I use these weapons in to take this full-on battle and turn it into my advantage? Now, on the note of the sniper rifle, I usually like to start with it. Because one, it gives me a nice good opportunity to scout the battlefield and see exactly how the fight is playing out, but then it also allows me to identify key threats and take them out from a distance. But then at the same time, I could save the sniper rifle, take out some guys, because there's a whole new wave of guys that happen once the battle reaches the midway point. Once that happens, I can return to the perch and then snipe those new threats before making my final approach. Now again, this distance is not actual sniper ranges. However, the way I'm using the sniper rifle here is very similar to how I'm using and thinking about the sniper rifle in Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes. So generally good game design, but then also a catered space is important to making this class of weapons feel genuine and feel unique within the sandbox, but not overtake any other weapon that's there. Spacing, I guess what I'm trying to say with it, is one of the key components to building a good single-purpose weapon sandbox. And even in a game like Metal Gear Solid 5 that's very wishy-washy with its balancing, there are certain areas and certain bases that are really fun to go at with sniper rifles. Now, of course, if you have a suppressed sniper rifle, you do feel very overpowered and you rarely get to see the counters that the developers have put in the game for when you use a sniper rifle. So let's take this base here. Coming at it with an unsuppressed sniper rifle gives me the power to take out enemies from afar, but then the enemies can also react. They'll send out search parties, they'll shoot up flares, they'll shoot mortars at me. You have counter snipers that are there on the base. And all of a sudden, you get this really cool thing where instead of just lazily going around the base and just trank sniping dudes in the head, I'm at a distance further away from the enemies than I usually ever am. However, the combat is as engaging as if I was in the middle of a massive firefight within the base. I'm constantly rolling around, I'm taking a shot, I'm repositioning, I'm laying traps for the dudes that are coming out to find me, I'm trying to get out of the light, I'm dodging explosives and praying that one of the enemy snipers doesn't see me. So even something like me sitting back and just sniping a base becomes so much more fun. It requires movement, it requires thinking, and that's what makes it so fun. That's what makes it more fun than this. So yeah, balancing your weapons is important. But when you're balancing your weapons, it's important to think about more than just the enemies you're fighting, but the space that you're fighting them in, and how that affects your options as a player, and how that affects where and how I will think about using these weapons. Anyways, you guys let me know what you think about spacing in video games, if there's another weapon class that we should talk about within this framework. I've been Pliskin, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Over and out.
This is Solid Snake. Hey, subscribe to Pliskin Boy. God damn it.
You heard him.